Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily with Kyle Elfrink and Ray Flowers, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on the products over at fantasyguru.com.
It is probably fair to say that humans, me, I think Ray's human, and all of us out there are creatures of habit. I think that's fair. I know I certainly am. I bring that up because today we're going to kind of break the habit on a Tuesday. We welcome you to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by the one and only fantasyguru.com. Human, Homo sapien, Kyle Elfrink. Ray, Homo sapien, right? You're still one of those, right?
As far as I know, Kyle, that's my parents were human beings, yes.
Yes, yeah. Well, you get to this point in the year and you're writing all these baseball articles, you start to become a robot.
A robot, yeah, that's fair.
I think so. So we got to get you back to humanity's side. I mentioned that we'll break the habit. We're going to kind of flip-flop today's show. First off, Justin Finsterman usually joins us on Tuesday. Not going to be here. He's going to join us tomorrow to talk basketball. We are going to talk football, but we're actually going to put it behind baseball. That's right, Ray. We're going to lead with some baseball. Mark it down, Ray Flowers. January 23rd is the day that you get your New Year's wish.
Yeah, for those people that don't know, Kyle kind of plans the show every day. So he sends me the rundown before the show begins. And I noticed that very thing. We've been having the baseball at the top, but then it's been all football. Actually talking some baseball at the start. I like it, Kyle.
Yeah, we're going to lead with there's not much going on in football. I mean, we'll talk about it. We obviously got the big games this weekend, but Tuesday's kind of a slow day. There it is. There's our rundown. You see that, yes, the fantasy baseball guide is out and available. Hit it up on that link you see. We'll talk more about it coming up. We will jump into one of the articles that we did not get to yesterday. I promised Ray we would get to this. Multi-positional assets, none better than a guy named Mookie Betts, who is now like the greatest second baseman ever, maybe. I don't know, maybe not the greatest ever, but he could be. He could put up some of the greatest seasons we've ever seen from a second baseman. We will continue our rundown of something we are discussing all week long, the catcher position. Yesterday, we kind of introed you to the spot for 2024. Today, we'll look at some of last year's surprises and can they do it again? There weren't a ton of them at the catcher spot, but we'll spotlight a few of them. Coming up later tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern, Major League Baseball will announce its Hall of Fame class. Ray, you sent me some internet number crunching. This could be a relatively huge class in 2024 for Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Ryan Thibodeau collates all the available data that comes out because a lot of people obviously post their ballots online and in articles and such. And, he's got almost 54% of the vote group locked down. And there's a lot of guys that are over the line. There's a guy that's a couple of ticks right behind the line. So there's a chance based upon the voting we're looking at that 4, maybe even 5 guys could be elected tonight.
And all these guys are like modern era guys, guys that I would suspect most of our audience at least saw these guys live, which, Ray, I remember being a kid and everybody that you saw elected to the Hall of Fame, you were like, wow, I bet they were great. Or you saw black and white video or old baseball cards. Now I'm officially at that age, Ray, where, I've been this way for probably 15 years, but the Hall of Fame is my Hall of Fame now. All these guys are, guys I got to watch, guys I got to cheer on. It's kind of cool that we've reached that point.
It is. And I'm old enough to remember all these guys too. But yeah, I think that it is cool when it becomes your group. And we're still dealing with this. And this, Kyle, we're still dealing with the, PED, steroid. And, I find it interesting how people choose to vote. I'll just put it that way. They are convinced some guys cheated. They know other people cheated. They don't care. They vote for them anyway. I wish they would just vote for the players based upon their merits. But I think we're getting to the point where we're finally starting maybe to move past that a little bit, which would be my biggest hope. Let's forget that in terms of putting guys in the Hall of Fame. Let's not forget it happened.
Yeah.
But because again, the picking and choosing with this guy, we don't know who did what when, period. No one knows. A lot of people that vote act like they know.
Well, and Ray, as we know, one more thing on this because we got other items to get to. But as we know, baseball is not beloved nor followed like it was, 30, 40 years ago. Yet nothing, Ray, brings out the baseball fanatics like this Hall of Fame stuff.
Yeah.
And I wonder with the voting and, we've got how many people are voting now? Is it 800? Is it? I don't even know.
I think it's like 4 430, 420, something like that. Yeah.
Big number. But a lot of people do put these out publicly, and it's cool. That's neat. It's fun to see. You don't have to do this. Some people choose to do it, but like I think even the people that do it publicly, they're like, this really isn't worth it because people just get pissed and yell and scream. And I mean, come on, it's just an opinion. I don't know. I guess next time you go to the trading card show and now you have to pay for Hall of Famer Todd Helton's autograph, it's going to cost you $40 more. I guess you can get pissed off about that, but I don't know. It's just kind of weird that people get so furious about the Hall of Fame. So we'll jump into some of those early numbers. Also, some baseball news and notes. The Dodgers continue to add to their rotation as they kind of put a plan together for the upcoming year. And then, of course, we will get to the football. We've got issues, perhaps, in San Francisco. Latest on Deebo Samuel with that shoulder injury. There's some questions about McCaffrey and his true health. We got a new head coach in Tennessee. We'll tell you who that is. Nick Chubb's future kind of up for grabs in Cleveland. And we will continue our week-long recap of the wide receiver position. Yesterday, we gave you the top 12, the guys who performed as wide receiver ones. Today, we will get to the guys who came up short of expectations. A lot of guys that we will not talk about came up short because of injuries. So we will not include most of those guys. Now, there's some guys that missed 3 or 4 games that we will include. Overall, wide receiver did us pretty well. And that's always one of the hallmarks of the position, is that in the last 5 years, when you draft guys to be studs, not that all of them are studs, but if they stay on the field for 15, 16, 17 games, they usually perform that way. So finding misses, you got to dig a bit deeper. Maybe you got to criticize a bit more hard, if you will. So we'll talk about that with wide receivers. Now, before we get into the baseball and the football, Ray, take us to the discounts, because I know people are probably salivating. Newcomers and maybe people who've just been too lazy. They are salivating today to take in your fantasy baseball draft guide, and you've got a discount for them when they order it, right?
We do, absolutely. Make sure you put that discount in when you pick up the baseball product. It's FSD20. That's 20% off on the product. So if you want to get hockey, you want to get basketball, you want to get racing, you want to get soccer, you can use FSD20 for all of our products. But if you put it in for baseball, it gets you that 20% off, knocks the price, the early bird, down to $40. And the $40 product is all season long, from now to the World Series, all season long. You get access to Discord. We'll do the show here as an added benefit for everybody, but you get access to Discord, you get all the articles, you get all the rankings, and we've got rookie, best ball, dynasty, seasonal rankings. We got all these rankings that are there. This week is kind of head-to-head week, so you've seen a bunch of those articles from myself and Patio Joe coming out today. We got the best ball product hopefully next week. We're kind of looking at maybe next week or the following week and have a whole thing. Scott Bonder and Rob putting that together for us too. So use the promo code FSD20. I think we've got you hit from pretty much all the angles that you're going to need to have success. And don't forget, the football package is still available too. If you want to do that, if you want to play DFS, if you want to get access to the Super Bowl package, the wagering package for the Super Bowl, if you want to get access to wagering, Discord, all of that's now available in the All-In NFL package. And you see it there. It's $39.99. Again, that gets you the Super Bowl betting guide, DFS, seasonal, Discord, all of it through the Super Bowl.
And Ray, weren't you telling me a couple of weeks ago you want to do a best ball fantasy baseball draft involving you, me, and the listeners? That's going to happen at some point, probably in the next month, right?
Well, now that you brought it up, Kyle, on air, I think we have to. But yeah,
it's not happening tomorrow, is it?
No, it's not happening tomorrow. We'll wait until the rankings are out at fantasyguru.com before we do that. But yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do it. In the old days, we do a show league, right? But it'd be 12 people or 10 people because 2 of them would be us. And we thought it'd be nice to get the listeners involved and get them a chance. Best ball is probably the way we're going to do it. We'll all sit down, do a draft, and then, let it play out. And we do have plans as well for leagues this year at fantasyguru.com. More information to come on that. Okay. But that's, when you sign up for the product, you'll get access to that as well. But if you want to do the best ball, that'd just be anyone listening here. You don't have to have access to the product to be involved with that.
But for best ball, 2 things. How many teams should you have and how many rounds should you have for baseball? I know it's a little different from football, but what's kind of your sweet spot you think for baseball?
That's a great question. I mean, to me, if I don't have an answer for what the industry does because I'm not really a best ball guy. Mm-hmm. But I would say that I would think 14, 15 teams. Let's make it deep, right?
I like it, Ray. And this may sound silly. I like 15 teams.
Yep.
40 rounds?
35-40 is what I was thinking. Yeah. So again, that's my one hesitation with this best ball. If we're doing a best ball draft, I'm setting that timer at 30 seconds because I'm not doing a 7-hour draft.
I'll say another thing, Ray. And for me, I'd rather do this off air.
Yeah, we're not going to do this on air.
I would rather sit and like play this out and kind of think about it.
No, but
you're going that deep.
Agreed. What I was saying is I'm going to set the timer at 30 seconds for the picks because I don't want this thing to take 7 hours. I don't want to be doing this till 3 a.m. But yeah, no, I think we should do it off air because it's going to take a long time to do it. But then we can obviously discuss it, break it down on the show, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that's something that can't say 100% we're going to do it, but it's probably at the 90% range.
We appreciate all those. Room's already pretty active on a Tuesday. They're ready for baseball, I guess. But people who are joining us on X, Facebook, YouTube, maybe you're listening to us after the fact on the podcast. Follow us. You'll get all the podcasts directly downloaded onto your listening device. So we appreciate all of those. And even those who follow us live, it's always good to download the podcast. It's always good to have more people listening. We also take questions. And Greg, I think Greg's asked this a couple of times. He wants Mans. Right, he wants Mans on the show. The problem with Jeff, he's it's like let's see, it's 11 Eastern. That's like 9 o'clock Phoenix time.
It's 8 o'clock.
No, right now.
Okay.
9. Yeah, at this point in the year. But he's probably heading to the coffee store right now, right? When does that happen?
We should get Jeff on here at some point, sure, and he'll do it. But the problem, and for those people that have been with us for a long time, they know this. Jeff and my schedules couldn't be more different. Okay. I start every day at 6:45 in the morning. I start before the sun comes up every day. Right. Jeff goes to bed at like 4 in the morning. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't wake up until like 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, I think he sleeps.
Come on, he gets more than 4 hours of sleep.
He really doesn't. He really doesn't. Okay. Yeah. But
Jeff, we need an intervention. We need an intervention. My God, that's like, people always want to talk about exercise and eating and being like the number one thing is sleep, man. Get some sleep. You got to get some sleep, Jeff. Everybody get some sleep out there.
It's not how Jeff does it. And he thinks that if you sleep 7 or 8 hours, you're lazy. That's what so getting him on I think we can do it now that the football season's winding down. But it's a different, he's going to have to plan for it. Whereas you would think he'd be up, he's going to have to plan for it.
He's a busy dude. That's, and he's got the show on Sirius and does a lot of the football. We will work our best. I think Super Bowl week might be a fun week to get Jeff on for the big game. And we'll have that big Super Bowl, write up, the wagering guide. He's all into that. So maybe we'll take aim at Super Bowl week. And we'll promote it. We won't just spring it on you.
Yeah.
We'll let you know. Because I get it. You're tired of Ray and I. You want peroxide on this show. So
it's so funny. There are those photos with the frosted tips, and people say, "You're a 46-year-old man with frosted tips." The photo's 10 years old, but there's a couple of good photos out there with him.
Yeah. So we'll get into that. Anyway, Greg, hold steady. We'll get around to it. Okay, let's get into the baseball. We like to promote, columns, specials, things going on the draft guide. And already Ray and the crew, Rob Povey and everybody, they've got loads of columns up there and player profiles and kind of breakdowns of last season, what went right, what went wrong, all that stuff. Another thing on there, Ray, is a color-coded positional eligibility chart, which this is always something, Ray. Like, here it is. Look at that. For those who are viewing. This is something, Ray, I wish it would be simpler and easier to digest, but it's like crazy in baseball. It's getting crazier every year. And then we've got different levels of what makes you eligible and what makes you not. And this has always been, Ray, one headache to me, especially if you participate in a variety of leagues, is figuring out who's eligible where in what league. Like, this is one of the more frustrating things, I believe, about fantasy baseball every year.
Yeah. It's kind of akin in fantasy football to being in a PPR, half point, and full point. A PPR, half point, and non-PPR, excuse me. Like, the value of a player can drastically change. It's kind of, I think, the baseball version of that. Traditionally, it's been 20 games played at a position, right? Problem is, guys play all over the place now. 20 games sometimes doesn't happen. There's, some guys on the list that just missed the 20 games at certain positions. And so a lot of leagues have started, I think Tout Wars started this a few years back. They started moving to 15 games to qualify for a position. Then you get some people that have always done 10 games. Some people do 5 games. I've been in leagues, it was a long time ago, but it was 1 game. So, I think everyone's kind of got their own. And then there's the difference of how you qualify in season. So it is difficult. It is, like you said, it's not there on the graphic we have on the screen, but in the actual draft guide, we've got green, blue, yellow, red. There's 4 different color codings. It's an Excel sheet you can download. It takes me forever to put it together and all of that. But everyone's got different rules. There's some providers named Schmahu that have every player is qualified at 8 positions. That's how they run it. So your provider has a big say in this too, Kyle.
In the article, which is online, fantasyguru.com, part of the draft guide, there are players who qualify at 3 positions, depending on your league. You can see some of the names Ray has there. Probably the biggest ones are the ones he's leading with. Guys like Spencer Steer, Hae-Sung Kim, Tommy Edman. Those guys are always a little more valuable if they qualify at those positions. And if you have daily changes, they can be very valuable in daily changes. Not that they aren't in weekly. But also, Ray, the DH thing. I mean, looking at guys who only qualify as utility, that's some big names there. Byron Buxton, Jesse Winker, JD Martinez, Eloy Jimenez, Harold Ramirez, Marcell Ozuna. Those are guys, and usually if you're DH only, you fall on draft day because you lock up that UT spot. Those are some notable names and some other names who could be more notable as this season commences.
Yeah, and again, that's the list there is 20 games. If you go and download the Excel sheet, you can see the color coding for 15, 10, all of that. So maybe your league is different, but there are a lot of big name players that, didn't do anything. I mean, Marcell Ozuna was 142 games at DH and 2 pinch hitting. Like, he didn't play the field. And that's big if the guy's hitting 40 home runs to think that, you're locking down a spot without flexibility. And it's never wrong to take a DH only player if the player is good, right? It's not wrong to do that, but it does make things tight because if you're talking about taking a guy within the first 100 picks that doesn't have a position, you're not giving yourself flexibility as the draft, goes through. Because if you have a guy who qualifies at second at short, you draft him at second base, someone else at second base falls. Well, now you slide this guy into shortstop. Maybe you end up getting another shortstop. You slide the guy into the UT spot. If you anchor yourself to one of these UT only players, it does change your draft strategy and the way you can put a team together.
And we were talking earlier about the games played qualification. If you are in a 15 game to qualify or lower, a lot of guys suddenly become available, Ray. There's a lot of guys, as you note in the piece, as you note here on the one sheeter, that are kind of that 15 to 19 range, which if you're playing 20 games, these guys are short. But for other leagues out there, these guys become more valuable because of the ability to move them around.
Absolutely. And so it's paramount to understand and beforehand. Don't just show up to the draft. Hey, what's the qualification? Understand beforehand so that you can plan. I think the biggest one, and he's listed there, is, and Kyle joked about Mookie Betts being the greatest second baseman of all time. He played 16 games at shortstop. So if you're in a league that uses 15 games, you now have Mookie Betts as shortstop, second base, and outfield. And depending upon your depth of your league and how your league mates draft and everything, does that lock him down as the top 5 pick? I mean,
well, I was going to say, Ray, I don't think he's going to go number 1, but, because Ohtani is, depending on how your league treats Ohtani, certainly Acuna, but gosh, Ray, I think there's at least a mention of him as a possible number 1 if you've got that daily ability to shift them between short, second, and the outfield. My goodness.
Yeah. In the NFBC, which is 20 games, so he only qualifies at 2 positions there, does not have shortstop. His ADP right now is 5. So he's a top 5 pick there, and that's without the extra position. Now, would he go above Acuna? I don't think anyone would take him Acuna. Bobby Witt?
Maybe.
Julio Rodriguez? Maybe. Corbin Carroll, maybe. So, yeah, and Mookie Betts is someone that you can never go wrong with drafting. The only thing that's going to stop Mookie Betts is injury, right? He's just going to be good. He may not steal 30 bases like some of those other guys, right? He's not at that point of his career anymore, but dude's just dynamic. And that third position would make you feel just ecstatic if you're able to grab him on draft day.
Check it out, the positional qualifications link. Also, you can download the color-coded chart. That is something that's very easy to print out, and then you can just take it to every draft that you have because you'll see, based off your league's parameters, who's actually eligible. And, hey, there are guys you can sometimes sneak through. We should note there doesn't appear to be, Ray, many guys who have the Dalton Varsho thing, right? There's not like this silliness of a guy, who's everybody knows he's an outfielder, but he has the catcher tag. There's none of that this year.
Yeah, and then Dalton Varsho loses it, like you said it yesterday on the show. And, going through here, looking at the list, I mean, Salvador Perez has got first base, but, you're not going to care there, right? If you drop down lower, no, because, a guy like MJ Melendez lost his catcher eligibility because he only played 10 games there. No, there's not. I'm looking at the list right now, Kyle. There's not a trickery guy, a trickeration player like Varsho was last season.
Well, I bring up catcher because that leads into our positional discussion, which we're covering all week long here on the show. We'll go position by position over the next 8-9 weeks. We start with catchers. Yesterday, we got things rolling. Today, we're going to look at some of the surprises of last year. But before we go there, I would like to hit you with a DYK each and every day for each position. At the catcher today's, did you know only 5 rookie catchers in the history of baseball have hit more home runs in their first season than Francisco Alvarez hit last season for the Mets? I don't know if anybody can name these, Ray. I will say this. One of them happened in 2012, I believe, a rookie catcher, and I'd totally forgotten about this guy.
Okay.
Until I looked it up. Now, one is Mike Piazza.
Right.
He's actually number 1. There's a player from the 30s. I think he played with Detroit, Rudy York. Hit 35 home runs as a rookie catcher. 1971, Earl Williams of the Atlanta Braves. Now, Earl also played some third base and first, but he was primarily a catcher. Okay. Matt Noakes.
Matty Noakes, 32.
Yeah, I remember the Matt Noakes hype. 1987 with Detroit. I remember getting Matt Noakes baseball cards was a win. Him and Kevin Seitzer in 87.
I think Kevin Seitzer's at 305 with 13 home runs, and Noakes is 289 with 32 home runs on RBI Baseball.
Okay.
The arcade game, greatest baseball game ever invented. I don't care what anyone says. I have the RBI arcade game. It's in my other room here. But yeah, I think Matty Noakes, he never got back to the top of that mountain.
Yeah, he got to. I remember he made the All-Star game as a rookie in 87, and he was decent. But after 89 hit or 90, he was finished. And then the player from 2012, who maybe Ray can double check this, either had 25 or 26 home runs. Again, Alvarez had 25 last year. He played for Colorado. Waddle Rosario.
Rosario, yes.
Another rookie. And then he kind of disappeared, never to be heard of again.
Waddle hit 28 home runs.
28?
In 396 at-bats.
What did he do the rest of his career?
He hit 21 the following season. Then he hit 13-6. Then he went to the KBO, Kyle.
Oh, my God.
And in 2 years in the KBO, hit 70 home runs.
Wasn't enough to get him a job back in the bigs, was it?
It wasn't. No, he ended his career with a 961 OPS and a 1074 OPS in the KBO, and no one wanted him back in the States.
Wow. You thought Barry Bonds got blackballed. Waddle Rosario, right? What more does a catcher need to do? Like Adley Rutschman wishes he was Waddle Rosario. Wow. Gosh, we might get some Hall of Fame votes for Waddle Rosario before it's all said and done. Okay, let's continue with the catcher discussion, Ray, and talk surprises. And a couple of these guys we actually mentioned yesterday. They were in the top 10, and they probably deserve a bit of a deeper dive. You see them right there. Jonah Heim of the world champion Texas Rangers. And then Yainer Diaz of the not world champion Houston Astros, but the very good Houston Astros. Ray, both these guys out of the Lone Star State, and I don't know. Do you remember reading anything about either of these guys going into last season as guys to get? Even as second catchers, Ray, I don't feel like they were mentioned at all going into last season.
Well, I know I'm in a keeper league. We keep 5 players year to year, and my second catcher was Mitch Garver. And when Mitch Garver got hurt, I went and grabbed Heim, and he was on the waiver wire. So it's a 12-team league with 2 catchers, and he was on the waiver wire. So yeah, I don't think that anyone was convinced that his offensive production was going to be better than 2022. And, again, it's okay. You hit 16 home runs, 50 RBIs, but there was no excitement, and no one thought the season would be to the level that it was last year.
Yeah. With Heim, the number that leaps, Ray, are the RBIs. Now I don't know how many people, if you watch the World Series and you follow baseball, they brought this up. It was a huge story in the first half last year. Texas was like out of their mind with runners in scoring position. Like they were just ridiculous with their production. And Ray, as you might expect, Jonah Heim was probably the lead dog there. I mean, this guy, he came up to bat 126 times, had 126 plate appearances with runners in scoring position. Now, he came to bat with nobody even on base 285 times. So he was a lot more batting with nobody on base than he was. Runners in scoring position, Ray, he hit 375, and 84 of his ribbies came. Now, again, that happens for a lot of guys, but that, Ray, just kind of speaks to, A, is he going to be in that position that often next season? And B, can he hit 380 next season? Honestly, he can. And that's the concern here with, I can't book this guy for 80 ribbies this upcoming season. I mean, that's fair, right?
He spent 90 games last year hitting sixth, right? So, and there's obviously a full expectation that the Rangers offense is smoking again, but batting sixth, seventh, that makes it a little tough too. You're right. I mean, he did a full Willen Rosario. He had 1,100 OPS with guys in scoring position, which is just not. I mean, the previous 2 years it was 725 and 771, which is basically the hitter he is, right? So, yeah, when a player does something outstanding, we want to credit that player, but we also want to be realistic about what that means moving forward. And let's say he hits 310, and let's say he has a 920 OPS, which are terrific numbers. What does the RBIs go from 84 to 64? Boom. Yeah. And what if he hits 265 with an 805 OPS? Then we take. So yeah, it's really difficult, especially given his likely spot in the batting order, to expect a repeat in the RBI column.
And Ray, I say thankfully, correctly. How about that? Nobody's given him any respect this year. I mean, to think you've got a catcher who drove in 95 dudes, like just that number, 95 ribbies. And Ray, he's not even being drafted as a catcher one in the NFBC. He's outside the top 12 in those leagues.
Yeah, right now at fantasyguru.com, I have him 13th. So, I mean, when you talk about a ballpark and you talk about a lineup, that there's the supporting pieces there. But I think you said it earlier, the batting average, think about this too. The batting average with guys on base, 375. He hit 375 with runners on scoring position and still only hit 258. Like, he's a 245 hitter. Like, that's just who he is. And he's not a 30 home run guy. He's not, Kyle Raleigh, right? So it's like, if that RBI number goes from 95 to 71, he starts pulling back, and he's not Ben Yan Gomes, but he's getting much closer to that level of catcher than what we saw last season.
I mentioned no respect for Heim. Ray, a lot of respect for the guy below him here on the photo, Yainer Diaz. Who really, I guess you could say from like June 1 to the end of the year, which, why June 1? I don't know. I just chose. He kind of became an everyday regular by the time June 1 rolled around. He started being the catcher for Houston. But Ray, from that point to the end of the year, this is probably the best hitting catcher in baseball, Yainer Diaz. I mean, you can make that argument. Mm-hmm. He's top 5 right now. So Heim, zero respect, but a load of respect for Yainer Diaz going into this season.
Yeah, and this one's interesting because it can be a good place to hit if you pull the baseball, obviously, with the Crawford boxes in Houston, and the Astros are always a good team, and Diaz, people are looking at Diaz and they're seeing 23 home runs and 355 at bats, and they're dreaming 30 home runs this year, right? They're dreaming that this is the new Salvador Perez.
Yeah.
Now the issue with that is, much like Perez, Diaz has no idea what a walk is. He has no clue.
Zero.
No idea what a walk is. And we've talked about this forever. There are very few players in baseball, very few in the entire sport, that can have a 3% walk rate and bat 280. Like, you expand the zone, you put too many balls in play. Diaz is not a guy like a Tim Anderson type that's going to beat things out with his speed, so that you pull that back a little bit. He didn't have an out of control home run to fly ball ratio, but 22% is a big number. If that number ticks back to 17, 18%, which is still way above league average, he loses a couple home runs there. So I think it's fair to look at his numbers last season and think he can repeat them. But my expectation is, instead of 350 bats, he's repeating them in 450 at bats. So it's hard to envision him taking a quantum step this year, but people are taking that gamble.
I think like the home runs are kind of the same over a full year this year. Maybe the ribbies are a little higher, but Ray, that 280 average, I think, is the misleading part. He should be a guy you expect closer to 250. I mean, 240 maybe. I'm not going to say the bottom could fall out. And frankly, Ray, let's say the bottom falls out and he's hitting 220. If he's clubbing 25 home runs, he's probably still a catcher one. And the other thing is he does not have to worry about Martin Maldonado. He's gone.
Right.
So like this idea of Maldonado coming in and stealing starts because he knows how to handle a pitching staff. We don't really have that. Who's the backup there now? Carantini. Yeah, Victor Carantini. Not really a threat. I don't believe. Maybe the Astros will surprise us there. So in effect, he's like an everyday catcher that Houston appears to be committing to. As long as he handles the pitching staff. They're really big on this. I mean, hell, Maldonado's stuck around for 4 years doing zilch in the lineup. Like couldn't hit worth a lick, but they were so sold on his defensive abilities. So I am not here to speak to Yainer Diaz as a defensive guy, but Ray, if he were to have issues there, we've already seen this franchise may actually bring in somebody to help him out, to figure things out. That could be a fear, but I don't think we're going to have to deal with that this season.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And, I think that I think it's good too, because let's say he hits 230 and he maybe presses a little bit on offense at times and all that. In the past, we could just pivot to Maldonado, let him, catch this week, take a break, kid, take a breather. That doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Caratini is perfectly acceptable, right? He's a solid number 2, but he's not, to your point, a guy that has any realistic chance of overtaking Diaz if Diaz is healthy, right? So it's a scenario where Diaz will go in knowing that he's the guy. The team will just say, go be you, and we'll be happy with that. And, even if there's some bumps in the road, he probably continues to play.
So Diaz, a true surprise last season, youngster who was called up, took over and hit and hit and hit. And now this season expected to be a top 5 catcher, according to ADP. Jonah Heim had a huge year, but not expected to be a catcher one. The only other name, Ray, that you can stretch the definition here, Elias Diaz with Colorado, and it wasn't all that impressive, but Ray, he made an all-star game. He was the all-star MVP. He kind of took advantage of Coors Field like you expect, but he's also a guy going as a catcher 2 this season. But overall, I wouldn't say there's any like huge surprises here. A lot of the names that we thought were going to be the best catchers last year, they ended up being the best catchers last season, except for Heim and Diaz kind of making their way into the top 12.
Yeah. And, I think that the position is such too, that if you have an out of nowhere season, even if it's not great, you can end up being as a catcher 1, right? There's a lot of parity at this position. A lot of guys hit 233 with 18 home runs or 275 with 9 home runs. Like there's not a lot, you know what I mean? It's like you come kind of out of nowhere and, you play and you get 450 plate appearances and you just have a good season. You can be a catcher 1. So there's still that opportunity too. I think the broader question for people too is like when we talk in football, do we do a super flex league or a 2 QB league? Do we do a 2 catcher league or a 1 catcher league? And I think a lot of people would just prefer the 1.
Yeah, we'll delve into kind of strategies and such as we continue the discussion on the catcher position this week. Surprises today. Tomorrow on the program, we'll get into the guys who were letdowns that you drafted to be catcher 1s and did not come close, kind of their outlook for 2024. Moving to some quick news and notes from the world of baseball. Pittsburgh signing Aroldis Chapman. Why the heck not? Make him your 7th, 8th inning guy. And I still think Chapman can be decent. He still he's a big, tall dude coming from the left side and throws hard. Don't really know where it's going, but he can still be decent. I think that's actually a pretty solid move by Pittsburgh. But Ray, maybe the bigger news is the Dodgers, your friends to the south, continuing to spend money, this time on Big Maple. James Paxton looks like he's close to a 1-year, $12 million deal with LA.
Yeah, and I mean, they print money in the basement. It's
quite a pregnant pause.
Yeah,
there.
It was, right. I was trying. We all know that James what's a successful James Paxton season?
15 starts.
Yeah. And they're paying him $12 million, right? Now, we were just talking about the Pirates. The Pirates to get 18 starts would have to pay him 3. Like that's just so the finances of the Dodgers allow them to take risks on players financially. I think from a fantasy perspective, here, like you said, 15, 18 starts is kind of where you got to be with James Paxton. So I don't think that going to the Dodgers necessarily changes his outlook much. What it does do is, diminish, I think, the outlook for a guy like Emmett Sheehan, who, was probably going to be the fifth starter for the Dodgers. Now the youngster's got no chance if Paxton is healthy. It was smart for the Dodgers because they have some young arms. They haven't obviously brought back Clayton Kershaw. Tyler Glasnow is always hurt. Walker Buehler's coming back off surgery. So it was a really smart move, a bridge move, a one-year deal, all that kind of stuff. But it does take some of the tarnishes, some of the youngsters with the Dodgers that you were hoping to make some starts.
Yeah. I mean, Paxton last year got 19 starts and was very average. I mean, the strikeout rate was still good, but it's way off his peak. So you kind of wonder where his health is. And for the Dodgers, it's an innings play. Mm-hmm. You can pay $12 million and hopefully you cross your fingers for 110 innings. I mean, that's honestly what they're looking at with James Paxton.
And they're all righties too right now, the Dodgers. They need a left-hander for the rotation.
Yeah, so I mean, more of a streamer guy, honestly, mm-hmm. I think, than anything I'm going to go after. We got a question there in the chat room before we leave baseball. Jason is on the clock. It's a best ball for him. We were talking about that earlier. Looks like he has Kyle Tucker, Garrett Cole, Lindor, Chisholm, Machado, and now he's in round 6. Best ball: Rauschman, Logan Webb, Logan Thomas, Christian Walker. Any of those guys feel good in the 6th round of a best ball setup, right?
Well, I think we're only looking at drafting the last 2 guys, right? We're asking if it's Rauschman or...
Yeah, he had another post right below it where he mentioned Christian Walker and Logan Thomas.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to say I'd probably go Logan Webb. It's tough because, in best ball, you want stability, but stability is more likely to be found on offense than it is in pitching. We talked a little bit about this the other day. Building a team in best ball around pitching is not ideal because the injury rate is just so high. But I do think that if we talk about Cole and Webb, we're talking about 2 of the most likely pitchers to throw 180-plus innings. If I took Webb here, I'm rounds before I get another pitcher. Like I'm going 4 or 5 rounds with hitting the rest of the way. You said, Kyle, you'd go in a different direction.
Well, and I'm assuming that's Lane Thomas.
I assume it is too.
Yeah, okay. So Lane Thomas of the Nationals. I might go Rauschman here, who we talked about a lot yesterday, Ray, mm-hmm. just to have that catcher position done.
You do the 2. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of attracted by that just to be done with it because the pitching, with the way this sport is built, Ray, I think on the back end of a best ball, you just like, pitcher. Yep. And you hope for the best. Logan Webb's good. Like in a different setup, he may be the pick. I think for this setup, though, I kind of want to just square away that catcher because honestly, I don't think there's a week that Rauschman isn't your lead catcher outside of an injury.
Well, and I also think, and Kyle and I have dealt with this for years because it's just the nature of it. People ask questions like this, which is the right question to ask, but it's very hard to give an answer because we can't see the board.
Yeah, we need to make sure you know what to do after that pick.
Yeah, too, and is your league drafting crazy? Is your league drafting close to ADP? Are you starting 5 outfielders or 3? Is it 9 pitchers or 7? Is it 2 catchers or 1? So, I always feel, and it's probably annoying to Kyle, and I'm sure it's annoying to listeners at times. Like I try to get the information because I can give you an answer, right? But I want it to be the best answer, and a lot of times we just don't have the information to really give the best answer.
Yeah. And again, it's baseball, it's a draft. It's a long haul. In football, you compare it, it's 14, 15 rounds. And baseball, most of these drafts are at least 25, 30. Best ball is even more. So there's a lot of planning that has to go into it. But we do appreciate the question there, Jason. Quickly on the baseball side, we talked about the Hall of Fame. We're going to get this announcement at 6 o'clock Eastern. For those interested, I think Major League Baseball Network will have it. But right now, it's looking like Beltre's in. I mean, that's easy. Joe Mauer's probably in. Can almost book that. Todd Helton, Billy Wagner right now are trending above 75%. That's the threshold. So I'm a little surprised Helton's pulling over 80%, Ray. A little bit. And then Sheffield is right on the edge of getting to 75. So we could have 4 to 5 guys, as you noted earlier, getting into Cooperstown this summer.
Yeah, we joked earlier about this before the show began. Adrian Beltre is trending toward having the 4th highest vote count in history. Now, is he a Hall of Famer? I think it's very clear he should be in the Hall of Fame. Don't have a problem with that. Is he the 4th best? No. And Kyle and I talked about the voting process, but to me, it's foolish to think Adrian Beltre is going to have the 4th highest vote total of all time. I'm a little surprised, but I think that we've kind of come full circle with the analytics. Like Joe Mauer was great. No one disputes Joe Mauer was great, right? Was he a power hitter? Was he the prototypical catcher? Was his career long enough? Did he catch enough? Because he's a first baseman. He's just a guy. Todd Helton was a terrific leader and a fantastic ball player, but it was the Blake Street Bombers and everyone was hitting 300. Your boy Ellis Burks was putting up historic seasons.
Still so not enough to get him into the Hall of Fame.
Not enough. But it was. I think that 10 years ago, like when Helton retires, no, he wasn't. But people started to look at it a little bit more deeply, and I think all the tools we have at our disposal now have allowed people, I think, to take some of the noise away and drill down a little bit. I wouldn't have a problem with Maurer or Helton getting in, but if we go that route, then we start becoming the Hall of Big versus the Hall. So it just depends how you view the Hall of Fame.
I've always, and I've lost this battle, so I've given up on it. But, I've always said my Hall of Fame's half as big as the real one. And so guys like Maurer and Helton, they're getting in now. Harold Baines, I mean, come on.
That was bad.
Yeah, these guys. So again, these guys are going to get in. If they don't get in this year, they'll eventually get in. I will say my Hall of Fame would have Billy Wagner in it. It would have Adrian Beltre. It probably would have Joe Mauer. Like his seasons, Ray, when he was at the top are legit. I mean, he's hitting 350 and the batting average is out of this world. So I think he's probably in there. I will say the other, maybe my new argument is going to be this, Ray, because again, I know the Hall of Good. You can vote in up to 10. Mm-hmm. And it seems everybody feels they must vote 10 every year. That's my problem. That's my new problem. There is no reason that people should be. Let me look at this list.
Corey Hunter, Jose Bautista.
Corey Hunter, or God, I love Matt Holliday. He was awesome, but why is Matt Holliday on anybody's ballot? Like, I think people are now, and that makes room for guys like, people are like, well, I got to have 10. So Billy Wagner, well, he's top 5. So he's in my 5. And that helps you get into the Hall of Fame. This idea that you always have to fill out your ballot is really a let down to me. And many guys that I respect, the guys, Rosenthal and Gammons and all these guys have been guys been voting forever. I get it, but like they feel they have to put in 10. And I think that is a real issue now. Is that everybody's putting in 10 and that eventually adds up to get guys to 75%.
Yeah. And I think that's totally fair. And there are years where, it's really top heavy. And then there's years where no one gets there. But then like you're talking about the lower guys start gaining. And once a guy starts gaining momentum, it doesn't ever go from 15 to 40 back down to 15, right? Mm-hmm. The next year it's 46, then it's 51. And so
it's the Scott Rowland road to the Hall of Fame, little by little, bit by bit, climbing your way to it.
Yeah. And so again, the Hall of Big versus the Hall of Small, it's the debate people have. I think that you just need to, I want people to be consistent. Don't vote one way one year and another way. Just be consistent. But I mean, I like to look at this list and, I know Andrew Jones' career fell off the face of the earth, but for 10 years, he was arguably the best all-around player in baseball.
Yeah.
Or, he's just under 70%. Carlos Beltran, he'll probably get in. He'll go the Helton route, right? They'll realize Bobby Abreu was a fantastic offensive player. Fantastic. He can't get to 20%. Omar Vizquel, who's apparently a horrible human being, is 12%. So, people vote how they're going to vote, but I agree with you. I'm more inclined to have it be the Hall of Small than the Hall of Big.
Yeah, I think year after year, if I ever had, and I obviously don't, but it'd be like 3 or 4 guys would get my vote. I wouldn't just say, oh, this guy's good and I respect him.
Right.
Let's give him a vote. So that's an issue. Anyway, 6:00 tonight. Okay, let's end things with a little football today as we lead up to the 2 big games on Sunday. I had a dream last night, seriously, a dream that like on Tuesday, the Kansas City-Baltimore game had been postponed because of weather. Like they were so scared that on a Sunday, I really dreamt that. And I woke up this morning and had to double check. But the game is still on for 3:00 on Sunday. That'll be KC Baltimore. That'll be followed by San Francisco hosting Detroit. With the 49ers, Deebo Samuel, I think we mentioned this yesterday. It's looking like 50-50 for Deebo. Kyle Shanahan said he's dealing with a lot of pain. Christian McCaffrey, we didn't get to bring this up yesterday. I did have it on the list, but he left for a bit of that game on Saturday. I think at the time people thought, it was maybe something with the calf. Then we heard quad. Kyle Shanahan swears to us, Ray, it is nothing of the sort. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
well, I don't know either, but he's getting it 20 times this week regardless, right? Unless his leg falls off. So, yeah, it seems like it's not a big deal. And I mean, I think with other players, you might slough it off, but with McCaffrey and his track record, you'd probably pay a little bit more attention to it.
Coaching news. Josh Allen wants Joe Brady back as the Buffalo OC. That is notable, Ray, because they became much more of a rushing attack under Joe Brady. They started to win games as well, so that is something worth following. Tennessee has their head coach. Ray, this is a classic Titans, but they're kind of a cheap organization. They really are. They're one of the poorer billionaires in the club. I don't even know if they're billionaires, honestly, at this point, outside of the asset that is the Titans. Right. But Ray, Brian Callahan is the hire, not Belichick and firing Vrabel or not Harbaugh. Brian Callahan, and I guess the plus here is he took Joe Burrow and kind of was the OC to get Burrow to the next level. And we saw what happened this year when they had to turn to the backup, and it actually kind of worked. And I guess the Tennessee plan is, let's turn this magic on with Will Levis. Make him our Joe Burrow down here in Tennessee.
Yeah, well, that's not going to work if that's the plan. But they can
quickly, huh? Ray,
yeah, he's not going to be Joe Burrow. No, he's not. Could he be a winning quarterback? Sure. I'm not saying that his career or anything like that. But Levis has got arm talent, but I think Levis is, best case scenario is QB 10, right? Like that's just the best case scenario. But it'll be interesting to see what they do because, it's hard to judge a young quarterback. You could see there were moments, there was a 4-touchdown game from Levis, and there were moments where he's slinging the ball over the field. And there are other moments you and I talk about where like DeAndre Hopkins is standing on the sidelines with hands there, bro, you threw that ball 15 feet over my head. Like that was, so they need to obviously work with him. He was raw coming out of school and everything. I don't know if he's the answer or not, but Brian Callahan is going to go a long way to determining whether or not he's the answer or they got to go in a different direction.
It sounds like Philadelphia is going to stay with Nick Sirianni, although they have let go of both their OC and their DC. So certainly going to be some coaching changes there for the Eagles. And then finally, Cleveland, they kind of had their end of the season meet and greet with the media, head coach and GM. And Nick Chubb came up, Ray, and obviously, he had that just gruesome injury early in the season. And it sounds like rehab-wise, things are coming back, and he has a shot of being there in week 1. But the contract's the issue here. I mean, this guy, I think, is the 3rd highest paid running back for next year, over $15 million. Cleveland, because of their own screw-ups, i.e. Deshaun Watson, they're up against it with the cap.
Right.
Ray, they can save like $11.5 million by cutting Nick Chubb. And knowing how this position is treated, the idea of I can draft a guy, I can bring in some dude off the street. We talked about the free agent pool this year. I'll go out and spend Zach Moss and get him in for $2 million for a year. Right. I know Cleveland say they want to make it work with Nick Chubb. That's what they're saying to a guy who's given 6 years to their franchise. Ray, I think he's going to be out for a team that has cap issues. There's no reason, honestly, and it sucks for Nick Chubb, but there's no reason to be paying him over $15 million coming off the injury he had and with the salary cap constraints that you're under.
Yeah, and even if his recovery is going well in the training room and the doctors are seeing good things, even with that being the case, they're not going to know in time if he's fully back to being Nick Chubb by the time they have to make all these decisions, drafts and all that stuff. So, yeah, I hope they can work it out. Maybe they can restructure something. I don't know. We'll see. But, yeah, if they don't restructure, I don't know how they can afford it. It just, like you're saying, it just doesn't fit where the organization is at. And that'd be unfortunate because he's done nothing but play great football for that team. And I think they love him there.
The way it probably works out is a swallowing of the ego. And what that means is, okay, I'm not going to get $15 million this year, but maybe I can get 6 this year and I'll get an extra year beyond that for like another, 2 of 12. And you may laugh at that. Like, why would a guy, well, again, he can get the $15 million, but if he's released, he doesn't get all of that. And he's probably going to get released. And then you go to the market, you go to a new team, you're coming off this injury. What is your market? So there is some idea that maybe you just take a huge haircut this year, but you get an extra year, maybe reestablish your value. So that is a possibility for Chubb in Cleveland. Let's get to wide receivers. This week on the program, we are following up on that position. 2 weeks back, it was quarterbacks. Last week, running backs. This week, we're talking receivers. Ray, we hit on the best of the best in 2023 yesterday. In terms of the misses, which we're going to talk about today, some of these are slightly unfair. Honestly, I was looking at guys who were drafted highly, and Ray, they, I don't want to say they went all Austin Eckler. They didn't. But, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, Jalen Waddle, these guys were fine, but they didn't maybe take that next step or repeat last season or get to 85, 90 catches. I even threw a guy like Cooper Kupp on here. And Ray, again, that's a little unfair. He missed games, but even when he was out there, he was a far cry. So again, you kind of have to stretch the definition, especially at the top. Now, there's a lot of wide receivers once you get outside the top 15. But at the top, Ray, it was kind of Ridley, Metcalf, Waddle, Kupp. Of those four, those were relatively big names. Who was the biggest disappointment to you of that group?
Well, I think just as a knee-jerk reaction, it's Kupp, because not only did he not live up to expectations, you got Puka over there setting all these records, right? And it's like, that should have been Kupp, right? The plan going into the season was 12 targets a week to Cooper Kupp and yippee-ki-yay, right? That was the plan. So he's probably just the most disappointing because of what he didn't do and what his rookie teammate did do. Waddle, to me, was, when you're the second wide receiver on your team, what are you going to do? 75 catches and 1,000 yards is really good.
Yeah, you can't really leap to 90 catches.
It's tough. It's very tough. Ridley, was fascinating because Ridley, I think he was the highest ranked of these four names at the end of the year. But it was, it was like almost like 100 yards and a touchdown or 26 yards, right? There was no in between. It was all peaks and valleys.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, he was there, but there was, I know, a lot of frustration with him. I think I personally am a little disappointed with DK Metcalf, but again, this is not DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
When he went for 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns, the fact is his quarterback receded. And I don't think that the team did a good enough job getting the ball to you can't stop DK Metcalf. You can't. He's impossible to stop, but they didn't get him the ball enough. So I think he's probably the one that hurt me the most, and he was the guy that actually was on my teams too.
Well, Lockett wasn't any good either. I mean, not the expected 100 catches from Tyler Lockett, but he always gives you touchdowns. He didn't do that this year. That kind of speaks to that offense. Christian Watson, that goes without saying. And again, he was in and out. Injuries, I guess he can blame. But I do want to remind people, both he and Kupp were injured going into the season. And a lot of people said, I'll take the risk. And it didn't work out. So remember that next year when guys are injured going into the season, I say this a lot, it doesn't usually get better. And those are two perfect examples. Guys who stayed healthy, Ray, I think Drake London and Jerry Jeudy were big letdowns. Those guys were probably drafted as wide receiver 2s. And again, the offense did not help them. And that's kind of what you keep going back here. Ritter didn't make that next step up. Sean Payton didn't save the career of Russell Wilson. When those things don't happen, the wide receivers are affected as well.
Yeah, and I think that you said this earlier in the show today too. One of the main reasons I believe that it makes sense to lean wide receiver early in a draft versus running back, right? We're seeing that a lot more now, is for what you said. Like, these guys are the top level guys produce. And the only thing that holds them back is injury or crappy offense, right? Drake London next year with a new quarterback and a new system in place is going to catch 85 passes for 8 touchdowns. It's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. Jerry Jeudy, I don't know Jerry Judy's that guy. I don't know even if he goes somewhere and they say, oh, Jerry Jeudy to me is I haven't seen Jack Diddley.
A lot of hype with him.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything. He's in and out of the lineup. He seems soft. I'm all in with Drake London. I am not in with Jeudy. But yeah, both those guys were disappointments this season. No way around that. And I think in the case of one of them, it was his team's fault. And the other one, I think it's a lot on him.
And I kind of went a little deeper because, again, the top didn't offer us many busts or misses. But I noticed there was a point in drafts, and it was mainly like the late 30s, early 40s at the position, kind of your wide receiver 4. And Ray, you see names like Michael Thomas, Treylon Burks, Kadarius Toney, Elijah Moore. I mean, these guys were bums. I mean, you couldn't play these guys at all. There were other guys in that wide receiver 4. If you guessed correctly, man, you feel great. If you made Jordan Addison your wide receiver 4, I mean, look how brilliant you are. But that was the point. And it's expected once you get that deep at the position. It's kind of a boomer bust pick. It's a risk reward kind of thing. But none of those guys who I was out on Michael Thomas.
Who was in? I can't believe we've fought this for 3 years now. Like, people stop drafting this guy.
And like Toney, I mean, a joke of a player at this point.
Like, what? Where were the flashes?
Treylon Burks is like done, right?
Well, I mean, you got a new coach. We just talked about it. You got a new coach coming in, the new offensive scheme. You can't bail on Treylon Burks in a dynasty setup. In a keeper setup, depends. You got to keep like your whole roster. Like, I don't know how you keep him even if he's your last, 16th round pick. In terms of drafting him in a redraft league, But yeah, his career there's injuries and there's just nothing happening there, and that's a couple of years of that now.
Back to those names at the top, and then we'll be done with this. Kupp, Waddle, Metcalf, Ridley. Are they all still wide receiver 2s? next season? They probably are, I think.
Ridley's a free agent, right? I think he is, right? Is that right, Kyle?
I feel like maybe he inked the extension whenever he came over. I don't think that Ridley is a free agent. Maybe double check on that.
Yeah, I'm double checking on that. I think that Cooper Kupp, his career's at a crossroads. I mean, to be fair, because no, he's a free agent next year, Ridley.
Yeah. Okay.
Unrestricted free agent.
Wow.
So his value will depend, obviously, where he ends up. Kupp, he's broken down now, and he's in his 30s, right?
He's not a wide receiver, too, for me. I mean, but people may take a shot and get 95 catches out of him. Who knows?
Again, answering these questions now, we have to answer them, but it's our job. But you can't answer these questions. We don't know where Kupp's going to be. We're not certain what the offense is going to look like. Are they going to bring running backs in? They're going to bring a tight end in because Higbee blew his leg out the last game. All these kind of things. But I'm down on Kupp, relatively speaking, obviously, compared to where he's the last couple of years. DK Metcalf, it depends what offense they install. I'd love to see him get a new quarterback. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think Metcalf is kind of more of the same. And Waddle, again, he's handicapped because he's got, arguably the number one receiver in football on the other side of the field from him.
Mm-hmm. Those are a look at some of the wide receiver misses from this past season. Tomorrow, we will take a look at guys who are kind of surging up boards. I'll give you one quick hit. Rashee Rice, guys like that who suddenly are making jumps when we talk about receivers for the future. So we'll hit on that tomorrow. More catchers as well, baseball, football. We'll also sneak in some basketball. Justin Finsterman is set to join us tomorrow. As for this Tuesday edition of FSD, we have reached the conclusion of our fun. Ray, as always, good times. We'll see how the Hall of Fame voting goes later today, and we'll get back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, okay?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, Kyle, and let's hope that we get some I don't know, surprise. I guess we'll just hope we get 4 guys in. What the hell? Let's go for it.
What about Gary Sheffield? You want him in? I'll say this. If you're going to put Todd Helton in, Gary Sheffield needs to be in.
Gary Sheffield was, I think, a more feared hitter.
Yeah.
Like if you at any point of his career, would you necessarily say top? So yeah, I think the thing, and John Heyman brought this up, is what are your thoughts with PEDs with Sheffield?
Mm-hmm.
I was in the Mitchell report, and but I agree with you. If Helton's in there, it's pretty tough to keep Sheffield out.
Yeah. We shall see. Okay, that will conclude our fun today. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Make sure you take advantage of the draft guide and the season-long coverage. Remember, those two are tag teamed together. You get the baseball draft guide. You get all of Ray's season-long work throughout the summer as well. And use that promo code FSD20. That'll take the $50 price tag down to $40 when you sign up for that draft guide. Okay, Ray, have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good, Kyle.
For Ray Flowers, I am Kyle Elfrink. We'll catch you on Wednesday right here at FSD, powered by fantasyguru.com.